Hello, hello. Dr. Maria Sampalis here with Dr. Laurie Lesser. We're going live today. She's coming up with us from Canada today, and we're going to be talking about optometry in Canada and how it's beneficial for Canadians and maybe Americans to go back and practice in Canada. So thank you, Laurie, for coming on again.
Thank you, Maria, for having me again.
So I know you used to work in Florida and in the U.S. in the past, and now you moved back to Canada and you practice optometry there. Tell us about your experience about moving back to Canada.
So, yeah, I'm originally from Ontario, and I lived there till I was about 10 years old. And then my family packed us all up and moved us to America. I went to school in Philadelphia, and I, moved to Florida, practiced there for a long time, raised children. And other than every once in a while when you'd see something crazy on the news and you go, maybe moving to Canada would be a good idea, I never really expected to move back until I realized my dream job was in Vancouver with Bailey Nelson. And now I really can't imagine ever moving back to the States or living anywhere else. So I've been pleasantly surprised about life in Canada. There's a lot of good things that I didn't expect. It's a lot of more outdoor activities. I know it sounds strange. When I was in Florida, it was too hot to actually do anything outside. Now I have mountains and the Pacific Ocean, and there's definitely more time to enjoy those things than you'd expect. And just overall, just feeling safer, on the street, or having more security with healthcare and gun control and things like that. And you just sort of realize, like, oh wow, this is like a pretty nice place to live.
So, what are some other ways that it's different than living in the U.S. or maybe an optometrist that might be considering moving their family to Canada?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is, as an optometrist, you actually can be a little bit more entrepreneurial, because for years when I practiced in the US, I would talk to optometrists who would stay in jobs they didn't particularly like because of health insurance, or they wouldn't take that sublease or take that step because finding insurance on your own in the US is so hard that they would be concerned that, oh my goodness, if I was to get sick or family members get sick, I could lose everything. And in Canada, because of the way the healthcare system is, that's not a worry for Canadian optometrists. Even if you have to hire your own staff, it's not an expense like it is in the U.S. And you know that you're not going to have a GoFundMe if I get cancer. It's actually something that's covered, and it means that you don't have that hanging over your head if you want to take a risk in business. And I think that makes a really big difference from a standpoint of being an optometrist and having a sublease or opening your own practice. I think it also makes a big difference that things like VCPs don't really exist here. So there's no IMED or Davis or VSP. So when you charge, $100 for an eye exam, you actually get $100, because even if the patient has secondary insurance, they just, the insurance company may pay 85%, the patient pays the other $15, you've gotten your $100. You're not thinking, oh, I have to see twice as many people to make the same amount of money. So you can work at a slower rate. We usually see 2 patients an hour. I worked somewhere in the States where you saw 4 to 6 patients an hour, and you can obviously make more money seeing less patients and really enjoying optometry. And that's something that's getting harder to find in the US because of all the VCPs.
Well, I think that Canadian atmosphere and then the rules and things like that. But I think the company Bailey Nelson has a good culture and good your leadership has been tremendous for having finding ODs and keeping ODs, and there has a lot to say for that. A lot of ODs don't. I mean, income has a lot to do with it. It's not 100%, right? So people have to be happy with the environment that they're in and work, and they have to be able to support their families. They're not looking to become millionaires or anything. They want a good job to go to. They're happy, take care of patients, make a difference, support their family, and have a good work-life balance. And I know, just talking in the past to people that work with Bailey Nelson sublease holders and yourself, I've been pretty impressed with that. A lot of doctors want to know scope of practice. We go to school and we in the U.S. and we can practice the highest scope of practice in certain states. But how does it different in the practice standpoint from the U.S.?
In a lot of ways, it's similar to the U.S. As you know, in the U.S., depending what state you're in, the scope of practice is definitely different. So, in Canada, province by province, there are some differences. At this point, I think Alberta has the widest scope of practice, but because we're such a huge country and there's so many people who live in rural areas where there is, not as much access to ophthalmology, I feel like over the next 10 years, you're going to see that expansion of scope. We don't have laser or things like that now, but if you look at, the few states in the US where it's now happening, I feel like when there's more data and positive outcomes, it's easier for optometry associations and colleges to go to the government and say, look, this has been going on for so many years in the US and it's been working well. Even New Zealand just passed rules to allow laser. So you can see that it's the easiest way to solve healthcare problems in big countries where the ophthalmologists are kind of all in the big cities and you need more care in remote areas. So I'm very positive that Canada and the Canadian Optometric Association is really pushing for those increases in scope and practice. And I know University of Waterloo, is a great place to learn to be an optometrist, and you learn all these skills that will allow you to do those things in the future.
Yeah. What are some advantages of being like a sublease owner in Canada versus the US?
Well, as I said, I think a big piece of it is you're not dealing with VCPs. You don't have people coming in or only going to see you because they have to go wherever their insurance goes. Usually different insurances, as I said, just pay in full for you. So it's very nice. Here at Bailey Nelson, we set up the insurance system so we can direct bill your patients. So you don't have people who are going to choose someone who can direct bill or not see you. The other piece of it is at Bailey Nelson specifically, our patient base is probably like around 20 to 60 years old. We don't see a lot of kids. We don't see a lot of elderly. And because of that, those patients are covered by provincial healthcare. And the reimbursement rate is a little lower, obviously. But because it's only 10 to 20% of the patients we see, it's not a financial burden. And then once again, depending on the province, it ranges. So in British Columbia, you can balance bill. So the government may only give you $47 for a senior exam, but you can charge that person the other half. So you're still getting your full payment. Alberta is like $80 reimbursement, which is a lot better than most plans in the US as well. And so there's definitely, and it's pretty easy, as I said, to earn a good salary without having to go home exhausted because you've seen 20 patients. And I think that, that's a piece of work-life balance that people don't talk about. It's like, oh, well, I want to work 4 days a week or whatever, that's fine. But it's also when you do work 4 days a week or 5 days a week and you come home and you still have the energy to go out with your friends or play with your kids or, be present and not be exhausted. And having that ability, where you're going to make a great living and you've seen 12 patients, is so different than a lot of the employed models in the US.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. You want to be, when you come home, you want to be present, right? I mean, that's the most important people in your life is the people you live with, right? And and you want to be present for your kids and I'm much more pleasant if I'm not overworked, right? But I'm also pleasant to my patients. I'm happy. That positivity goes a long way. But if you're seeing a lot, you're getting stressed out a lot. Unfortunately, sometimes you take it on the patient, comes out of the practice, and then you're maybe not present at the house and things like that. Unfortunately, sometimes, and it kind of goes like that a bit. So that's something to take forward to. And I think for young moms too who are working, that's something to come into play. Maybe you have a busy practice, and you said you want 4 days, but you're squeezing all those patients, and sometimes you do kind of pass them out, and like maybe one day you leave at 2:00 and you have time to do other errands before you pick up your kids. I've done that in the past too, but it's kind of seeing a lot of patients and is it really gets to you after a while. And you're correct. The work-life balance should be part of that. What are some pathways of practicing in Canada? If I want to come from the US and work there, maybe like a retired OD wants to come work there.
Sure. So part of the reason I wanted to talk today about, practicing in Canada is because a large proportion of optometry students who are Canadian end up going to schools in the US because there's only 2 schools in Canada. And one of them is taught entirely in French. So, if you're not fluent in French, there's only about 90 spots in Waterloo every year. So that means about 60% of Canadian students go to school in the US, and then they may be misinformed about the opportunities in Canada, and that there are many, many different ways of practice. And alone in Bailey Nelson, you can have a sublease, you can be an associate, you can be employed with, benefits and, vacation. We are eventually rolling out, like an ownership partnership type of setup as well. So,
when's that coming out? That's interesting to me. I'm sorry. Now you got me.
We just rolled out a partnership store in Australia. We have to Canadianize the rules and everything. Great. So it's in the future, but it means that no matter what point you are in your career, there's a place for you to partner with Bailey Nelson, and I think that's really important. So, students are like, oh, I'll spend a year in the States after I finish school because there's nothing for me in the Canada. It's not true. There's so many different opportunities, from subleases and more commercial settings like Bailey Nelson, which is not a very commercial setting. We're very laid back. We want, you to come to work as your true self. We don't care, who you love, what you look like, where you come from. It's all about being a good person and doing your best to help people. But there's all kinds of things like that. There's, working with ophthalmologists, working, in private practice. There's, other corporations, obviously. And, there may be there's these big, companies in the US who come into the schools and try to convince Canadians to stay. And I just want to say, Canada's a good place to live. There's a lot of reasons to come back. It's a lot less crazy stuff in the news every day, and it's a little safer in a lot of ways, and I think that makes a big difference. So we are happy to sponsor Americans who want to come to Canada and have a little change. Maybe they just want an adventure. Maybe they want to live in a ski resort for a couple of years. We can do that for you. We can sponsor you. You'd probably have to start working as an employee for another optometrist, and we have that set up here. But once you have your permanent residence, if you wanted to have a sublease or partnership store or whatever else, we would have opportunities like that as well. So, if the news is getting you down and you want to move to the Great White North, we can definitely, help support you make that move.
What does a sponsorship entail? Like, how long is a process for something like that?
It looks like the process may be, 6 months a year. We're just actually starting our first sponsorship, so I don't have details. So we'll have to have another conversation in the future about it. Yeah. But if you have a profession and there's a need in a province for that profession, it's pretty easy to immigrate here. You just have to sort of prove that you would have a job. They don't want you.
No, I think it's excellent. I mean, Bailey Nelson continues to innovate and find ways to attract ODs, whether it's partnership or, sponsorships, things, a lot of different things that I've seen it. You take the feedback from your ODs that work from you and make it better. Right. And that's something that, just like I said, people just want to work and have a good place to work. And maybe if Canada's a better environment for want to live in a ski resort or whatever the case is, for maybe a young OD starting off, maybe a doctor that's retiring and just kind of wants it laid back and, ski every day, that might be something that I might be interested in. And is the cost of living the same, or is it higher? What is it like in Canada?
Once again, it's kind of dependent on where you live. If you want to move to parts of Alberta, it's just as affordable as other parts of the US. Living in Vancouver is probably equivalent to living in San Francisco or New York. It's, you go to a big city, it's obviously going to be more expensive, but there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of different provinces, and it really just depends what the person's looking for. And we definitely, offer incentives for people to go to slightly more remote locations. And, even like our remote locations have skiing and mountain biking, and like, it's like not like you're in the middle of a cornfield. So I think there's really like some great opportunities for optometrists that maybe they never really thought of, or maybe they're going to school right now in Boston or Chicago, which are really nice cities, but there's a lot of reasons to come back to Canada and live in almost any province they wanted to. We're expanding rapidly. We're opening up Saskatchewan, we have Manitoba, we have Ontario, we have Alberta, British Columbia. We're probably going to open up in Nova Scotia. So we're just keep expanding across the entire country, and we're looking for great optometrists to partner with. And it's definitely a really fun place to work. It has a really nice environment. I have so many of my doctors who, like, their best friend is now the store manager. They just hang out together because it's a very young, demographic in the store, and a lot of very young doctors as well. So it's been a lot of fun, and there's like great support and camaraderie between the doctors as well.
Well, I think that's something to be said right there. When you said the store manager and the doctor are friends,
I know
that has something to do with Bailey Nelson, right? Because sometimes, there's pressure from corporate. They take it to the manager has to take it to the doctor, or if there is, goals aren't being set, and it's blame this and that. You don't have that culture there, and then you can see that by going into a store, how long a doctor's been there. If people are happy, if they have a good relationship with the store manager, they work together, they're partners, they're camaraderie, right? So they're colleagues. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that in some offices. And I think that has, it's great that the store manager, the doctor, but it really has to do with the culture and the structure that Bailey Nelson puts together.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think the fact that myself and the eye care director who you interviewed a while back in Australia, we both still practice. So we're in the store and we see exactly what it feels like to practice in a Bailey Nelson. And if there's something that we don't like, or we're not comfortable with, or we feel could be improved upon, we have a voice, at the highest level to say, hey, we should do this differently, or we should add this equipment, or we should do, this, that, or the other thing. So it's not.
And you guys have implemented it quickly.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of times in corporations, it takes a while. Like, because you guys are in the trenches and the company's innovative and new, and they're making changes quickly. So doctors like, well, we talked about EHR, but it's still been 2 years. Or we talked about this retinal camera and it hasn't happened. Well, after a while, doctors don't want to hear we'll see or what. So just getting it done, and you have a lot to do with it too, and so does the eye care director in Australia and New Zealand, and they're listening to you. So that tells me that the company is forward thinking and positive on optometrists and want to move it forward. Even when there was an issue in Canada with optometry, you guys backed the optometrist. Am I correct?
Yes.
I mean, you don't get a lot of that sometimes support from corporate opticals.
Yeah, I mean, that was very important. As soon as the Ontario doctors explained it to me, I'm like, oh yeah, no, there's no way we're gonna ask you to break the strike. So yeah, the job action in Ontario to increase the reimbursement from the government, and it actually worked to an extent. They went up to about $60 for a senior exam, so that's not bad considering I think it was like 40 before.
Yeah, when do we ever get support from a corporate optical to help us increase our fees? I think that's great. The doctors appreciate that. Now the doctors are appreciative. They give back more. They give more to the office. They feel part of something. They have support. And I think those are the things that really grow a brand and keep people engaged, and people want to be there. That's the difference. People want to be there. And and again, it's the company, it's the leadership. You've done a great job, and I applaud you on that. And thank you so much for coming on today and talking about ODs coming to Canada, and just maybe a different perspective of getting optometrists from the U.S. sponsored and coming to Canada. I think that might be something of interest to some of the doctors. And if they are interested, can you provide your email address so they can email you?
Oh, definitely. It's laurie.lesser@baileynelson.com, and we can post it in the when this goes live. Great. I appreciate the time, Maria, and I'll see you in Vegas.